Hello. Hodesh Tov, as we say at the beginning of the Hebrew month, which is tracking the moon. It's a new moon astronomically as of this morning early. And in the realms of astrology, the new moon is in the sign of Scorpio, which is the archetype of deep, watery depths and intensity and of underworld explorations. And so this new moon, as we know collectively from what's going on right now, is really intense. And so in that spirit, I thought I would come on and share some songs that have been buoying me right now and supporting me right now and singing through me right now. I've got a candle lit. It's traditional to light a candle or a fire. In the ancient days, it was an ancient bonfire that would actually spread the message across the land that the new month had begun. So I'm sending this out to all of you for maybe literally inviting you to light a candle, or metaphorically. And I'm going to share some songs here. The month is Kislev in the Hebrew calendar. It's traditionally or often taught as a month of dreaming and dreams. It's also the month of Hanukkah. At the end of the month, we move into the Festival of Lights or Miracles, or toppling empire, of rebelling against the mainstream, rebelling against the military forces and powers. All relevant right now, of course. This is a song that I've been singing a lot ever since watching the rabbis for Ceasefire live stream this morning, which, if you didn't catch it, go on YouTube and Google it, or look it up on YouTube, Rabbis for Ceasefire. It was a powerful morning of prayer and press conference and direct action in DC, with many rabbis and kohanot and prayer leaders saying, not in the name of our tradition, this needs to end. This violence, this militarism needs to end. This is a song by Nava Tequila, a classic Hebrew liturgical call for peace, with the added not just peace in Yisrael, but peace Yoshvei Tevel in the whole world. Oh, say shalom bimroma, Uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, imru, v'imru, amen. Oh, say shalom bimroma, Uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, imru, amen. Rambabadambabo, yababambabo, yabadidambabo, yababimbaibaibo, yayadambabo, yayayayo, yadadidayadado, yadadambabaibo. Oh, say shalom bimroma, Uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'imru Amen. Yaram Babo Yam Babo Yararim Babo Yayayo Yayararo Yambabo Yarariraindaro Yararirairo 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 Yababambaibo Yababambaibo Yababi Yaraini Yabababo. You do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone. This is sung by Ale Blakely. You do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone. Ale Blakely out of Seattle just released a new album, Spells from the Shadow. That's the last song on the album. Carry This. I'll post it in the description. Go out and buy it. One thing that I want to say here is if you're anything like me, you're being really buoyed by song and artists, visual artists and movement artists. And I mean like dance and movement, and also movements for ceasefire and ending the occupation and justice and freedom and dignity for all. And I'm curious how we collectively, and I'm asking myself this question too, is how are we supporting the artists? I did that yesterday by buying that album that I just named from Ale. I paid for it on Bandcamp and felt good to say, yes, let's make sure that the people who are writing the songs that are feeding us right now and carrying us are being fed and carried also. There's an ancient teaching, the Levi'im, in the 12 tribes framework of the Jews in the days of wandering in the desert. There were 12 tribes, and then there was a 13th tribe, the Levi'im, the Levites, that didn't have a land, that didn't have a place in the north, south, east, or west. They were in the center. They were landless, and they were the ritual leaders, the song leaders, and the magitin, the storytellers. And because they didn't have land, they couldn't grow their own food, and they couldn't accrue or create wealth or resource. So they depended on the 12 tribes, the people that they would help gather in the center, literally and metaphorically, in ritual and song and story and dance. They relied on the people, on the community, the other 12 tribes who did have land, who did have resource, and who had a deep yearning and need for what the Levi'im, for what the storytellers and song leaders were bringing. They relied on them to bring them the food that they needed to support them, to give them what the Levi'im, what the Levites needed to continue providing the music. So it's a gentle invitation, and I'm receiving that as both like support me as Levi'im, and also how am I supporting my fellow song leaders. This is an old classic I've been thinking about and singing a lot. I might screw up the words here, so bear with me, but you know the chorus at least. How many roads must a man walk down before you can call him a man? And how many seas must the white dove sail before she could sleep in the sand? And how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? Hopefully not too many more. The answer, my friend, it's blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? And how many days does it take till he knows that too many Palestinians have died? And how many years must one person have before they can hear someone cry? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? And how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? And how many days must one man have before he's able to see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing answers, too many years, too many times, too many deaths. I really want to acknowledge that this is a really hard time to be alive, but I want to say specifically that if you, like me, carry deep or partial or disconnected Jewish identities, wherever you are in that realm, if Jewish is part of how you move through the world, this is a particularly tough time. Obviously, it goes without saying right now that if you're Palestinian in Gaza, where you're actively being bombed and pushed out of your home, of course, and people who are Palestinian in the diaspora, it's obviously a hard time. If you're Israeli and you've lost people, hostages, people murdered on October 7th, or you're just in the milieu, so to speak. I have my dad's cousin, an aunt, someone who's like been an aunt to me who lives in Israel and been privy to some of the glimpses, some of the snapshots of life there as one of the lucky ones, as she put it. It's a tough time. But specifically for us American Jews, there's an important role for us to be playing right now, which is to be going against the grain. It might not feel like it to other people when we've got hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people in the streets worldwide calling for a free Palestine, calling for the end of occupation, calling for a ceasefire. It might not feel like it's the thing that's controversial, but in the Jewish community, it's a deep source of division because, well, for many reasons, but one of them is that the state of Israel, basically for its entire existence, as far as I can tell, but certainly for my whole lifetime, has made it part of its project, part of its Zionist project, to keep the truth, and I put that in quotes, but to keep the reality of the occupation hidden. There's a lot of talk about propaganda, and I've been privy to it in many different contexts, but I would say that maybe the most egregious form of the propaganda is just veiling the realities on the ground of the Palestinian existence from so many of us in the American Jewish project over these last 20, 30, 40 years, I'll just say from my lifetime's experience. My parents literally founded the synagogue that I was raised in. My grandmother was a survivor of the Holocaust. My grandfather, too. Many of my family members were not survivors. I was frickin' bar mitzvahed in Israel. I was the president of my youth group. All that is to say, deeply Jewishly connected in this context, and I didn't really know much about the realities of the West Bank or Gaza until my mid-30s, 20 years after I was bar mitzvahed. And that is some of the violence of the Israeli project, of the Israeli state. I don't disagree that Jews have some kind of claim to that place. And I have experienced in my own body the deep nourishment of being in a place that has that kind of ancestral lineage. But it's not worth it to me if it means it comes at this cost. I can find holiness in the soil right where I am, which of course carries its own bloodshed of the people who were here before the white settlers arrived in this place. In some ways, it's violence all the way down, but at some point we gotta stand up and say, okay, maybe we have a claim, maybe there's something to be said here, but not in my name, not the continuation. This, what's happening, not this. There's a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, who's generally credited with beginning the Hasidic movement back in the day, and certainly a holy teacher to so many of us. Baal Shem Tov translates to the master of the good name. He was a radical of his time. He literally got kicked out of the communities where he started to teach early in his career and kind of fled into the hills and lived as an herbalist and a mystic and a hermit in the forest for, I don't remember exactly, but it was many years. It might have even been more than that, like decades, if I'm not mistaken. But for a long time, he lived away. And when he came back to his community as a sort of burning eyed, wild teacher of the plants and of the land, he was seen for who he was, a master storyteller and a mystic and a healer. And he basically ignited this movement of the Hasidim, which is still alive today. But I would argue that some of its expressions have moved away from its original intention, which was to connect with people where they were. He was responding in opposition to or in response to an orthodoxy of Judaism, of rabbinic Judaism, that was deeply entrenched in some very beautiful ways and in other difficult ways, the texts and the study um, and the sort of intellectual, um, almost elitism, if you will. Uh, and he was really interested in bringing Judaism and Torah teachings and the way of living a holy life and a sacred life and a meaningful life. He was really interested in bringing that back to the kitchen tables, to the campfires, to the town squares, to the places where people weren't literate. We call ourselves people of the book, and we literally read. There are people, teachers of mine, who call this the world's oldest book club, where we read from the Torah every week. But what about for people who don't read, who didn't have that kind of education? He really wanted to make Judaism accessible for them, and that's some of the lineage that I draw upon, and I see it differently in these days. But all that is to say, the Baal Shem Tov had a teaching that if you don't know what the truth is, if you don't know how to proceed in a given situation, or you don't know what is true for you or generally, start with what you know isn't true. It's not this, it's not this, it's not that, it's not that. And just continue to say not this and not that as long as you need to. And eventually, you'll get to what it is. So right now, a lot of us don't know what happens after a ceasefire. That's often an argument that some of my Jewish friends who are really confused or reluctant or terrified or horrified at calls for ceasefire right now, a lot of times what they'll say is, but what happens after? Well, can't really know. But what I do know is it's not what's happening now. This isn't it. Indiscriminate bombing and raining terror down on a largely civilian and child and women and child population. This isn't it. This isn't going to get us closer. Let's sing one more song. I was at an action in JV here in Providence, Rhode Island, yesterday with JVP Rhode Island. We were on the bridge. There's a beautiful pedestrian bridge that crosses the Providence River right in the middle of the city, and we set up a whole bunch of cloth banners, empty, blank to begin with. When I arrived, they were all blank, and by the time we left, they were filled, probably like 50 feet worth of these large banners filled with the names of the Palestinian children who've been killed in the last month plus. It's almost 5,000 at this point, I think. And I wrote one name down as we were preparing, as I was getting ready to lead some song. And we had the ages of the children next to them, and it was just crushing to take the few moments to write this little child's name, 4 years old, and then to come back after being up front leading song, and to come back up to the bridge and see that in the last 2.5, 3 hours where we'd been holding some ritual and prayer and song and hearing from speakers, that the banners had been filled, and we still didn't get anywhere close to all of the names. We had bags full of the names on little slips, and there were still so many names that didn't get written. And yeah, we could have also put the names of the Israelis, and perhaps that would have been a powerful move. But the point that we're trying to make now is we need to stop the violence that's continuing in response to that. This is not how we respond to violence. This is not how I want to respond to violence, with more violence. So, this is a prayer from Abigail Bengtson of the Bengtsons that we sang yesterday that's been really supporting me. I pray for peace and liberation. I pray for peace in every nation. I pray for safety for all children. I pray for justice and love. I pray for peace and liberation. I pray for peace for every nation. I pray for safety for all children. I pray for justice and love. I pray for peace and liberation. I pray for peace in every nation. I pray for safety for all children. I pray for justice and love. I pray for peace and liberation. I pray for peace in every nation. I pray for safety for all children. I pray for justice and love. I pray for safety for all children. I pray for justice and love. I pray for justice and love. Kenyi Ratson. May it be so. May it be a deep desire for peace and ceasefire that so many of us carry in our hearts. May we keep singing and organizing and calling out and calling our politicians. Don't forget that our politicians are deeply embedded in the military-industrial complex. Deeply embedded. These are really big forces that we're up against. Let's stay together, stay connected to one another, even when we disagree. We got to stay connected. Our real enemy, our real opponent, is violence and militarism. It's what Dr. King called one of the triple evils, militarism. Let's unite against that. Chodesh Tov, Shavua Tov, may it be a good week.